Hello everybody, my name is Steven and welcome back to the Storytime channel. Without wasting any of your time, let's get into our stories of the day. Entitled Grandmother thinks it's okay to take my items without my permission. Back when I was a freshman in high school, my grandmother thought it would be a good idea to take my belongings without informing me while I was at school. To elaborate, I had a small table with cubby holes in it that I kept the belongings in that were important to me. I had autographs, signed art, and awards I had earned over the years in those cubby holes. I came home from school to go to my room, only to see that the table had been replaced with an enormous dresser. Confused and concerned for my belongings, I went to confront my grandmother about where everything went. This was the conversation as follows.
Oh, I took it out and put it on the porch for a place to put my shoes. I hope you don't mind, OP.
I thought she was joking, cause why the freak would anyone use a table as a shoe rack? We already had several by the front door and I didn't think she was serious. But I went out to the porch and sure enough, there it was. Decorated with shoes, potted plants, and empty mason jars. I then come back inside to ask where my belongings were and what she did with them. If you wanted my table, you could have asked when I got home. Also, where's my stuff that was in it? At this point, my entitled grandmother starts to get defensive and tries to avoid my questioning.
I wasn't going to wait for you all day to come home. I have a lot of work to do and you should feel grateful that I replaced your table with a desk.
Yeah, she thought that the dresser that she got me was a desk. I looked at her, still trying to decide if she was serious or not, and she was. I tried to explain to her that a desk has leg room and doesn't have the drawer that a dresser has for you to put clothes in. She wasn't hearing it. However, I wasn't either and continued to ask her where my belongings were until she finally gave in and told me.
Why do you care so much about those things? It was only several awards and other stuff. I had to do something with them in order to move the table, so I put them in a box while you were at school and moved them to storage.
What the freak? You took my stuff and put it in a box without telling me?
Don't use that type of language in my house, OP. I'm going to smack the head out of you if you use it again.
I don't give a freak if you smack me. You took my stuff without even letting me look through the box to see if I wanted to keep anything? Not long after, my grandmother and I started arguing. My grandfather comes into the room after hearing us argue outside. He had been on the phone with a client of his, and as soon as the client hung up, he came in to see what was going on. OP and entitled grandmother, what are you arguing about this time? For context, my grandmother and I never got along well, and this only tipped that boat even more in the water. She took my table and stuff that was inside it to use as a dang shoe rack when she already has 3 of them by the front door. OP, you shouldn't talk to your entitled grandmother like that. I've noticed how disrespectful you've been getting around the house towards her, and you need to straighten up your act. Upon hearing this, entitled grandmother tries to play the victim card and starts tearing up, voice cracking and everything.
OP, why are you always so angry at me? Have I not done enough for you already? What did I do to deserve this kind of treatment from you? Please tell me.
Don't pull that stuff with me, entitled grandmother. You've been doing it every time I catch you doing something bad just so you don't have to take responsibility. My oblivious grandfather gets furious at this point with me. He disregards the fact that his wife had stolen my belongings and starts going off at me. OP, look what you've done. You need to learn to respect your elders. You've always been a good granddaughter, but this is unacceptable. I can't believe how you're displaying yourself right now. This is my household and you are only 15. 15 or not, she stole stuff that was important to me. How would you feel if I went into your room, took your clothes and stuff out of it, stuck it in a box while you were out of town, and told you that I put it in a storage room and replaced your furniture with something else that served no use to you?
Well, I would feel grateful that someone would take their time to think of me and spend money on me.
See? Entitled grandmother is thankful for things in her life. Why can't you be, OP? You need to learn how to be thankful for what others have done for you in life. Otherwise, you won't get anywhere. What do you think your boss would say if you spoke like this to him? I think he'd have some common sense to know that you shouldn't steal other people's stuff if they aren't in the room. I had ended up storming off and could hear oblivious grandfather and entitled grandmother talking about how rude I was. The storage area wasn't too far from my house, only down the road, so I walked there the next day and couldn't find the box my grandmother was talking about. To this day, every time I try to go and see if I can find the box, I believe that my entitled grandmother threw it away and tried to come up with something that would get me to stop questioning her. It wasn't really too bad in my opinion until I heard the fact that they couldn't find the box, and then that hit me. Because I would be so livid if stuff was just taken from me like that and I never saw it again. Because they wanted to use it as a shoe rack? What would you have done, or what would you have said in this situation? Let me know what you would have done in the comments below. Entitled Dad fractured my wrist after it was done healing. Background: this happened 7 years ago. I had fractured my left wrist from falling and had it put on a cast for several months. After my wrist completely healed, it was all normal, but I was still quite paranoid and had anxiety that I might fracture it again, as the doctor told me that I still needed to be careful. After a month of finally being able to move my left hand normally, I got so happy. But it did still hurt a little because the doctor said it wasn't fully healed, and he just told me to exercise it by moving it around, etc. But this is where the event happened. I was watching TV with my dad and he asked me how my wrist was feeling, and I told him that it was fine. Then he called me over because he wanted to check, and I wish I never went towards him. He grabbed my wrist and squished exactly at the part where it was fractured, and I was screaming and crying telling him to stop, and he just told me to stop being a baby and that he was playing around. He stopped after I screamed even louder in his ear, which made him angry. After this, I just ran straight into my room and isolated myself from my dad for days. That's straight up abuse. That's terrible to hear about. Personally, I'm wishing the best for OP in their living situation. Entitled Aunt demands my consoles for my cousin. This is the second experience I've had in my 26 years of life, and I'm hoping it'll be the last. Doubtful. I have a glass case at home. It has all my old consoles and lots of retro ones I bought through the years, as well as their games. It's my pride and joy, and sometimes I will take them out and play on them. My cousin, 11-year-old male, thinks they're cool and likes to admire them when he used to come over. He knew not to touch them. Well, my aunt, the definition of Karen, calls and asks what I'm going to give him for his birthday. Keep in mind, I hadn't received a gift from her since I was 5. Yet she insists I need to give her child a gift. Usually I just toss him a couple bucks. When I told her I hadn't thought about it, I knew I messed up. Well, how about we do a joint present? He really loves those games you keep in that case. And he's so bored since the silly flu started to go around. Surely you can let him have one. I told her no, that they're not for sale. I wasn't asking to buy them. You would seriously charge family for something you don't use? I didn't know you were so selfish. He's been driving me up a wall. You can't just give him your Switch or something? Grammy S will hear about this. Seriously, I'm so tired of your generation being selfish. I'm tired of him whining. He's bored. I need a coffee and nap, and I can't even get that. She droned on for probably a good 5 minutes before I hung up. She's left me 5 voicemails, but I just don't want to even bother listening to them, as I already feel my last brain cells dying. I hate that the aunt was trying to use the family angle, trying to pressure OP into giving up something that they truly cherish and don't want to give up. Just go and buy him a Switch yourself. A Switch Lite isn't that expensive. Entitled parents help themselves to the back of a grocery store to look for supplies. My husband is a manager at a grocery store, and recent events have had him displaced from his department, doing things like manning the door to make sure not too many people are inside, stocking shelves, running registers, and even taking temperatures of employees before they start work. Normally, he runs the bakery. He has come home with all kinds of crazy stories, but when he told me this particular story, I knew I had to share. A couple weeks ago, he was in the back helping organize stock. He said a lady, a customer, walked into the back sheepishly looking around. A coworker of his spotted her and asked her to leave, and she did without a word. My husband was shocked, as she was clearly trying to see if she could grab something she needed without anyone noticing. He shook it off and continued to work, but later, another guy came into the back for the same reason. He wasn't as shy as the first customer and confidently stalked around looking at the pallets of food and health items yet to be unpacked. He walked past a few employees until one stopped him and asked him to leave. The man then asked if there was any toilet paper back here. The employees, of course, didn't indulge the guy and continued asking him to leave. My husband then stopped what he was doing and walked over to help the employees already trying to shoo the man away. The guy insisted there must be stuff back there that hadn't been put out that he needed, not just toilet paper. They kept asking him to leave, and the guy kept arguing, so my husband threatened to call police. The guy still didn't leave. Another coworker called the police, and the guy finally left before the cops could come. My husband is bad at sharing details and stories, so I don't know what else the guy said to defend his stance, but my husband did say that the man said this to argue his point. "I have 2 kids at home." And that's the moment I thought of this sub. Hope you enjoyed. Like, I kinda get it, but everybody else is also in the same boat, so you can't just walk into the back and expect to get preferential treatment or be able to scoop something up under the noses of everybody. Entitled Kid accuses me of assault after I refused to give her my gaming PC setup for 40 rupees. Character guide: me is me, EM is entitled mom, EK is entitled kid, M is mom, B is brother, younger than me, BGF is my brother's girlfriend. Backstory: so I am a 21-year-old male. When I was 16, I decided to earn money here in India. The problem was that unlike in the US, we don't have the working as kid culture, so there weren't many options for me to earn money from. After discussing with my friends and reading up articles on the internet, I decided to become a freelancer. My gig was creating PowerPoint presentations. It was a decent gig and I got a good chunk of money. Coupled with my parents' support, I bought a gaming PC setup. I got all the pieces individually and then assembled them. My parents were proud, and though they did help me buy the components, they said it would be mine to use and own. I spent most of my time on it and kept upgrading with newer components. The entire setup plus the games that I bought cost me 2,200 USD. Imported all the components. Now, on to the story. My brother, 3 years younger than me, was celebrating his 16th birthday at our house. It was on a Sunday, so I was at home instead of college. My college is in my city, so I come home every week. He invited a bunch of his friends and his girlfriend, who in turn got some of her friends together. All the friends were boys, while the friendses were girls. Entitled Kid was a friend of my brother's girlfriend too. The party started at around 10 in the morning. Since I knew most of my brother's friends, I greeted them all as they come, one after the other. After exchanging pleasantries for a while, I went up to my room to work on a project for college on my laptop. Not PC, this is different. After about an hour, I heard someone knocking on my door. I open it and there's my brother with all the guests standing behind him. He asks if he could use my gaming setup. I flat out refused. This setup costed me a lot of money and I was very protective of it. My bro pouted and then left. I closed my door and went back to my work. A couple of moments later, I heard knocking again. This time it was my mom who requested me to let him play. We went back and forth for a while, but in the end I relented as he was my bro and it was his birthday. I set up the PC and told him precisely what games to play. He agreed and they all started taking turns and playing. There was this one girl, Entitled Kid, who was eyeing the setup. I assumed that she was just shocked to see it and let her admire it. Soon after, it was her turn and she looked like she was having a blast. After her turn was completed, she called out to me. I looked up and the following conversation ensued. "Hey, is this your setup?" "It's mine. Who else did you think it was?" "Oh, I like it." "Thank you." There was some awkward silence till she started talking again. "So, how much?" "Excuse me? How much did the setup cost in total?" Around $2,200 including all the games and add-ons." She proceeds to hand me a couple of 20 RS notes and says, "That should cover it." I couldn't help myself. I burst out laughing. Everyone else in the room joined in because of the sheer absurdity. Entitled Kid looked around slightly confused. She then started moving towards the setup and I realized that she was actually being serious. I quickly handed the money back and told her to leave my room as I was feeling uncomfortable. She refused and continued moving to the setup. Once she was within arm's reach, she tried to lunge for my setup. I grabbed her arm and yanked her back. I then sent her out of the room and locked the door. She banged on it a couple of times, but then my mom called out for lunch. We all left and headed to the dining area. I ate as quickly as I could so that I could be with my laptop in case she tried anything else. After I finished, I headed up to my room to play for a while. A couple of my brother's friends joined and we all trooped up to my room. After half an hour, Entitled Kid came in, keeping her hands behind her back. I noticed this and told her not to come any closer. I got up from the setup as she took yet another step forward. I warned her that if she comes any closer, I would push her back. She then lunged forward and I saw that she was holding a glass. I smack her hand and juice spills all over the floor. She screamed as I held her arm and put her in an arm lock. My mom came into the room followed by my bro and brother's girlfriend. Brother's girlfriend screamed at me to let her friend go and I reluctantly did so. Before anyone could say anything, she tried to attack the setup once again, screaming, "If I don't get it, no one gets it." I once again restrained her and I told my brother to call her mom to pick her up. After 10 minutes, we heard a car pull up and Entitled Kid broke out of my grasp and headed out the door. Not more than 20 seconds later, a woman bursted into my room screaming profanities and accusing me of assaulting her daughter. Before I could respond, she threatened to call police if I didn't give her the setup for free as, "My precious angel deserves it," and "You shouldn't have assaulted her." I refused and she ended up calling the police. 10 minutes later, the cops show up. Before I could say anything, Entitled Mother accuses me of assault. I won't go into detail because I myself don't remember everything she said, but a few lines hurt a lot. After her rant was over, they asked me to step forward and give myself up. My room had a camera in it and coupled the witnesses who saw everything. The police arrested both of them instead after me and family pressed charges. In the end, we went to court and Entitled Kid was sentenced. I don't remember exactly what, but one of the charges was assault and another was destruction of private property. What a couple of psychos. I honestly wasn't expecting it to get so severe. Trying to kill the computer with juice? But with that said, that's all the stories we have for today, so what I want to know is, which of these stories interest you the most and why? Let me know which one piqued your interest the most in the comments below. And thank you all so much for watching and listening to the Storytime channel. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing and don't forget to turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Thank you all again for watching and listening to the Storytime channel.